The struggling artist donates painting to charity auction, sparking a bidding war that changes her life. Mia Chen watched her fingers tremble as she signed the small white card that would accompany her canvas to the auction block. Something about writing her own name felt like both surrender and defiance, a contradiction she had lived with for so long that it had become a comfortable ache. November's early darkness pressed against the windows of her studio apartment, the kind of cold that seemed determined to find every crack in the old building's facade. The single-room space that served as both her living quarters and art studio felt particularly small tonight, walls lined with canvases that represented years of work, hope, rejection, and rare moments of validation. She studied the painting propped against her worn couch, the piece she had chosen to donate. It wasn't her largest or most technically impressive work, but it was different from the others, created during those strange hours between midnight and dawn when her guard slipped and something raw emerged from her brushes. A solitary figure walking away from the viewer down a rain-soaked street, face unknown, surrounded by blurred lights that bled into reflections on the wet pavement. The entire canvas awash in blues, violets, and that singular splash of gold light that seemed to follow the figure like hope refusing to surrender. Mia had named it Walking Away from Yesterday. She should have been selling it, not giving it away. The rent notice with its angry red lettering lay crumpled near her small kitchenette, a reminder that being 32 with a fine arts degree and stubbornly pursuing painting wasn't the secure path her parents had warned her about. The memory of her last phone call home still stung, her mother's careful suggestion that perhaps it was time to be practical, and her father's heavy silence that said more than words ever could. Just one sale. Mia whispered to the empty room, one real break. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diana, the friend who had convinced her to donate to the East Side Children's Center auction in the first place. Are you coming tomorrow night? People need to meet the artist! Mia's stomach tightened. The thought of standing in a room full of wealthy potential donors, making small talk while they assessed her work, and by extension, her worth, made her want to crawl underneath her blankets. But Diana had been insistent that connections mattered, that being seen mattered. I'll try, she texted back, knowing even as she wrote it that it was probably a lie. She wrapped the painting carefully in bubble wrap, then in an old sheet for additional protection. It wasn't much, but it was something she had created, and she couldn't bear the thought of it being damaged. Her hands lingered on the wrapped canvas longer than necessary, apparent reluctant to let go. The next morning, Mia dropped off her donation at the community center where the auction would be held that evening. The young woman who accepted it barely looked up from her clipboard. Name of piece? Walking Away from Yesterday. Starting bid? Mia hesitated. 300? It was far less than she'd normally ask, but this was charity after all. The woman nodded, adding it to her list. The auction starts at 7. Artists are encouraged to attend. Mia nodded vaguely and turned to leave, already feeling the familiar lightness of having shared her work, mixed with the heavier sensation of wondering if anyone would value it. Back in her apartment, she spent the afternoon on a commission piece for a local cafe, painting cheerful flowers that bore no resemblance to her usual style, but paid $50 that would help with groceries. As evening approached, she found herself staring at her closet, wondering if she should go to the auction after all. Her phone buzzed again. Doors opening now. Coming? Diana was nothing if not persistent. Mia sighed, set down her brushes, and made a decision. She would go, if only to show Diana that she was making an effort. She chose her least paint-stained black dress and a pair of boots that hid the fact that one sole was starting to separate. Her dark hair went into a simple knot at the nape of her neck, and she applied a touch of lipstick, her single concession to the formality of the event. The community center had been transformed when Mia arrived. String lights hung from the ceiling, and white-clothed tables displayed the auction items. Volunteers in black attire circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Mia immediately felt out of place among the well-dressed attendees who moved with the easy confidence of people who belonged. Diana spotted her from across the room and hurried over, elegant in a blue dress that made Mia's look shabby by comparison. But her smile was genuine as she hugged Mia tightly. "You came. I was afraid you'd hide in your cave all night." Diana linked arms with her. "Come on, let's go find your painting. They've arranged everything beautifully." They made their way through clusters of chatting people, Diana occasionally stopping to introduce Mia to someone. Mia smiled and nodded, the names washing over her without sticking. Then they turned a corner and she saw her painting. Someone had positioned it under a small spotlight that made the gold in the painting gleam against the darker colors. It looked different here, more vivid, more alive. A small group of people stood before it, and Mia instinctively pulled back, unwilling to hear their assessment. "There's the artist now," Diana said loudly, propelling Mia forward despite her resistance. 3 faces turned toward her. An older woman with silver hair cut in a sharp bob, a middle-aged man with kind eyes behind modern glasses, and a tall man perhaps a few years older than Mia, dressed in a suit that seemed at odds with his slightly too long dark hair. "This is Mia Chen," Diana continued, ignoring Mia's discomfort. "Mia, these are some of our most generous supporters." The older woman spoke first. "Mrs. Eleanor Whitman. Your use of light is quite remarkable, Ms. Chen. James Peterson," said the middle-aged man, shaking her hand. "I run the Children's Center. Thank you for your donation." The third man said nothing at first, his eyes moving between Mia and the painting. Then, Gabriel Reyes. "I'm just here supporting the cause." His voice was unexpectedly gentle. "Your painting. It feels familiar somehow." Mia wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Thank you," she managed, addressing all 3 of them. "I'm happy to support the center. Are you a full-time artist?" Mrs. Whitman asked, in the tone of someone who couldn't imagine such a thing being viable. "Yes," Mia said, lifting her chin slightly. "I also take commissions." Mr. Peterson smiled. "Well, we're grateful for your contribution. The auction will begin in about 20 minutes. I hope your piece does well." As they moved away, Diana squeezed Mia's arm. "See? Networking. You just met Eleanor Whitman, who sits on 3 museum boards, James Peterson, who knows everyone in the city's art scene, and Gabriel Reyes, who—" She paused. "Actually, I'm not sure who he is, but he seemed interested in your work. He said it felt familiar." Mia replied, looking back at her painting. "I'm not sure what that means." Diana shrugged. "Maybe he's seen your work before." "Anyway, let's get some champagne before the auction starts." The auction began promptly at 8. Mia found herself standing at the back of the room, nervously sipping champagne as various items were presented and bid upon. Kitchen appliances, vacation packages, jewelry donated by local businesses. The bidding was enthusiastic but not dramatic. Then the art portion began. The first few pieces, a watercolor landscape, a ceramic sculpture, a framed photography set, each earned respectable bids. Mia's pulse quickened as she recognized the next item being brought forward. Item number 47, Walking Away from Yesterday, an original oil painting donated by local artist Mia Chen. The bidding will start at $300. Mia held her breath. There was a pause, a moment when no one moved, and her heart began to sink. Then, "300, called a voice. Mia looked up to see the kind-eyed Mr. Peterson with his paddle raised. "350, came another voice before the auctioneer could speak. "Mrs. Whitman." "400, said Mr. Peterson. The auctioneer smiled. "I have 400. Do I hear 450? 500? Said a new voice. Gabriel Reyes had moved to the center of the room, paddle held high. Mia's eyes widened. $500 was more than she'd ever sold a painting for outside of a gallery. 600, countered Mrs. Whitman. 750, said Mr. Peterson promptly. The room had grown quieter, attention focusing on the unexpected competition. 800, Gabriel said, his expression impossible to read from where Mia stood. Mrs. Whitman frowned. 1,000. A murmur went through the crowd. Mia's hands trembled around her champagne glass. 1,500, Gabriel said without hesitation. Mrs. Whitman turned to look at him directly. Mr. Peterson lowered his paddle. 2,000, she said, her voice crisp. The auctioneer was beaming now. $2,000 for this beautiful painting. Do I hear any advance on 2,000? 3,000, Gabriel said, meeting Mrs. Whitman's gaze steadily. The room was completely silent now. Diana gripped Mia's arm so tightly it hurt. Mrs. Whitman's mouth tightened. 3,500? Gabriel didn't hesitate. $5,000, Mia gasped audibly. The auctioneer looked delighted. $5,000. Do I hear any advance on $5,000 for this remarkable painting? Mrs. Whitman studied Gabriel for a long moment, then slowly shook her head. Going once, going twice. Sold to number 29 for $5,000. A smattering of applause broke out. Mia felt lightheaded. $5,000 for her painting. more money than she'd made in the last 3 months combined. Mia! Diana was practically jumping up and down. Do you know what this means? That was Eleanor Whitman bidding against that guy. Eleanor Whitman. And he outbid her! You need to go talk to him right now. I can't, Mia whispered, but Diana was already pulling her through the crowd toward where Gabriel stood talking to the auction assistant, credit card in hand. Mr. Reyes? Diana called, and he turned. Up close, Mia could see that his eyes were a warm brown, with tiny lines at the corners that suggested he smiled often. I wanted to introduce you properly to the artist. This is Mia Chen. Gabriel's face brightened. Ms. Chen, your painting is extraordinary. Thank you for donating it. Thank you for bidding, Mia managed. That was incredibly generous. He shook his head slightly. Not generosity. I wanted it. There was something direct about his gaze that made Mia both uncomfortable and strangely seen. Would you tell me about it? What inspired you? Before Mia could answer, they were interrupted by Mrs. Whitman approaching with Mr. Peterson. Well played, Mr. Reyes, she said, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Ms. Chen, I'd like to see more of your work. Do you have a portfolio online I could view? Mia fumbled in her small purse for a business card, handing it to Mrs. Whitman with slightly shaking fingers. My website is listed there. Thank you for your interest. Mrs. Whitman tucked the card into her clutch. James tells me you're quite talented. Perhaps we'll speak again soon. She moved away, Mr. Peterson following after giving Mia an encouraging smile. She doesn't like to lose, Gabriel commented, watching them go. But her interest is genuine. That could be significant for you. Diana, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly gasped. Oh, I just realized who you are. You're Gabriel Reyes of the Reyes Foundation. He looked faintly embarrassed. Guilty. Mia looked between them, confused. The Reyes Foundation? Diana stared at her. Seriously, Mia? The Reyes Foundation funds arts programs across the country. They have that huge grant program for emerging artists. Understanding dawned on Mia's face. Oh, that would explain why you're here. Gabriel nodded. We're considering the Children's Center for a grant to expand their arts education program. He hesitated. But that's not why I bid on your painting. An auction assistant approached with Mia's carefully wrapped canvas. Your purchase, Mr. Reyes. Gabriel accepted it with a nod of thanks. Would you excuse me for a moment? I need to arrange to have this delivered. He walked away, leaving Mia staring after him. Mia, Diana hissed, do you have any idea what just happened? Eleanor Whitman and Gabriel Reyes were fighting over your painting. This is huge! Mia nodded, still dazed. $5,000? For the Children's Center. That's wonderful. Diana rolled her eyes. Yes, charitable donation, very nice. But I'm talking about what this means for you. Eleanor Whitman took your card. Gabriel Reyes bought your painting for 5 times the next highest bid. These are connections that could change everything. Ms. Chen? Gabriel had returned. I wonder if I might have a word with you privately. Diana immediately stepped back. I need to check on the silent auction items anyway. Mia, I'll find you before I leave. She gave Mia a meaningful look before disappearing into the crowd. Gabriel gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. Shall we? They moved to a small seating area apart from the main auction floor. Mia perched on the edge of a chair, hyper-aware of her posture, her dress, every detail of herself that felt inadequate in this setting. I want to be direct, Gabriel said, sitting across from her. Your painting moved me in a way that art hasn't in a long time. There's something about the solitary figure, the way the light follows. He paused. I was wondering if you'd be willing to show me more of your work. Mia blinked. Of course. I have a website. He shook his head. I'd like to see it in person. Your studio, perhaps? If that's not too intrusive? It was intrusive. Mia's studio was also her home, her private space, revealing in its smallness and disarray all the struggles she tried to hide from the world. Yet this man had just paid $5,000 for her painting and might represent a real opportunity. I work from home, she said carefully. It's not very impressive. I'm interested in your art, not your decor, he said with a slight smile. But I understand if you're uncomfortable. We could meet at a gallery or my office? No, Mia said, making a sudden decision. My studio is fine. It's where the work lives. It's honest. He looked pleased. Honest is good. When would be convenient for you? They arranged for him to visit the following afternoon. Gabriel handed her his card. Simple, elegant, with just his name and contact information, no mention of the foundation. As they rejoined the main event, Mia felt a curious mixture of anxiety and excitement. Something had shifted tonight, though she wasn't yet sure what it meant. Diana found her again as the auction was winding down. So, what did Gabriel Reyes want? He's coming to see my studio tomorrow, Mia said, still not quite believing it herself. Diana's eyes widened. Mia, this is it. This is your break. Promise me you won't sabotage it. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. Don't downplay your talent, don't apologize for your work, and for God's sake, clean your apartment. Mia laughed despite herself. I was planning to do that last part anyway. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Mia stood in the center of the room and tried to see it through a stranger's eyes. The worn furniture, the paint-splattered drop cloths, the kitchenette with its mismatched dishes, but also the light, north-facing windows that had been the main selling point when she'd rented the place, the organized chaos of her supplies, the canvases that represented 5 years of dedicated work since graduating with her MFA. She moved slowly around the space, straightening, clearing, making mental notes about what needed to be done before Gabriel arrived. Then she stopped before a canvas turned to face the wall. She hadn't looked at it in months. Slowly, she turned it around. A self-portrait, painted during a particularly dark period last winter. Mia sitting alone by a window, face half in shadow, half illuminated. In the painting, she was looking not out the window but at her reflection in the glass, the city lights behind her a blur of color and movement, separate from her stillness. Gabriel had said her painting felt familiar. Would he see something in this one too? Would he see her? Mia turned the canvas back to the wall. That was too personal, too revealing to share with a stranger, no matter how much he'd paid for her other work. She fell asleep that night dreaming of bidding wars and spotlights, of being seen and recognized, of finally stepping out of the shadows of her own painting. Morning brought reality back in sharp focus. Mia woke early and spent hours cleaning her apartment, creating as much separation as possible between her living space and workspace. She selected 12 canvases to show Gabriel, arranging them carefully against one wall. Then she showered, dressed in her most professional-looking outfit, black jeans, a crisp white shirt, and a charcoal blazer that had been a graduation gift from her parents in more supportive days. At precisely 2 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. Taking a deep breath, Mia opened it to find Gabriel Reyes standing in her hallway, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at ease. He'd traded yesterday's formal suit for dark jeans and a navy sweater that made him appear more approachable. Ms. Chen, thank you for agreeing to this. Mia, please, she said, stepping aside to let him in. Welcome to my studio. Gabriel entered, his eyes immediately taking in the space with interest rather than judgment. You have excellent light, he observed, moving toward the windows. It's why I took the place, Mia said, relaxing slightly at his focus on the practical aspects. North light is consistent throughout the day. He nodded, turning his attention to the canvases she had arranged. May I? Of course. Gabriel moved slowly along the wall, studying each painting with careful attention. Mia found herself holding her breath as he paused before a series of 3 canvases that showed the same city street at different times of day, the mood shifting dramatically with each changing light. These are remarkable, he said quietly. The same location becomes 3 entirely different emotional experiences. He glanced at her. Is this how you see the world? Transformed by light and time? The question caught her off guard with its perception. I suppose it is. Everything changes depending on how you look at it. When you look at it, nothing stays the same. He nodded as if she'd confirmed something important. What about that one? He pointed to the canvas turned to face the wall. Mia hesitated. That's personal. Not something I usually show. May I see it? She should say no. She had every right to keep that piece private. Yet something in his expression, genuine interest without demand, made her nod reluctantly. Mia turned the canvas around, avoiding looking at it directly as she propped it against the wall. Gabriel was silent for so long that she finally forced herself to look up at him. His expression had changed, become more serious, more intent. This is why your work felt familiar, he said finally. Not because I'd seen it before, but because it speaks to something I recognize. He gestured toward the self-portrait, the division between the observed self and the world beyond. The way light reveals and conceals simultaneously. His eyes met hers. This is extraordinary work, Mia. She felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely validated. Thank you. Gabriel moved away from the painting, giving her space. I'd like to be direct about why I'm here. The Reyes Foundation has a grant program for emerging artists, as your friend mentioned last night. The grant includes financial support for a year, mentorship with established artists, and culminates in a featured exhibition at our gallery space. Mia's pulse quickened. And you think I should apply? I think you should be one of our recipients this year, he said simply. The formal application process is a formality in this case. Your work speaks for itself. I don't understand, Mia said slowly. You saw one painting at an auction and now you're offering me a grant? Gabriel smiled slightly. I've now seen 13 of your paintings, and yes, I'm offering you consideration for a grant. The foundation supports 5 artists each year. The stipend is substantial, enough to cover living expenses so you can focus entirely on your work. Hope flared in Mia's chest, immediately followed by suspicion. Why me? There are thousands of struggling artists in this city alone. Because your work has a quality that can't be taught, he said. Technical skill, yes, you have that. But more importantly, you have vision. You see the world in a way that makes others want to see it too. He paused. Also, Eleanor Whitman's interest in you last night confirmed my initial assessment. She has an excellent eye. Mia moved to the window, needing space to process what was happening. Outside, the city continued its afternoon rhythm, unaware of the potential transformation taking place in her small apartment. This seems too good to be true, she said finally. It's an opportunity, not a guarantee, Gabriel said. The work will still be yours to do. But yes, it could change things for you. He reached into his pocket and withdrew an envelope. This contains the formal application materials and information about the grant program. Take some time to think about it. Mia accepted the envelope, noticing that her hands were steady now. Thank you. I will. There's one more thing, Gabriel said, his tone changing slightly. The painting I purchased last night. Would you tell me about it now? What inspired walking away from yesterday? Mia looked toward her easel, where she'd been working on a new piece before Gabriel arrived. It was a difficult time, she said slowly. I'd had a series of rejections, galleries, grants, even a commission that fell through. I was questioning everything, whether I had any talent, whether I was fooling myself staying on this path. She met his eyes. One night I went walking in the rain. I felt like I was leaving something behind with each step, but I didn't know if that was good or bad. And the gold light following the figure? She smiled faintly. Hope, I suppose. The thing that wouldn't let me quit, even when logic said I should. Gabriel nodded. That's what I saw in it. That's why I had to have it. He glanced at his watch. I should go. You have a lot to think about. He moved toward the door, then turned back. The application deadline is in 2 weeks. My card is in the envelope if you have questions. After he left, Mia stood motionless in the center of her studio, the envelope in her hands containing what might be her future. It felt both weighty and insubstantial. Possibility, not certainty. Her phone buzzed. Diana, of course. Well, how did it go? Mia smiled and typed back, He offered me a grant opportunity. A big one. The response was immediate. I told you. This is it, Mia. Mia set down her phone and opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter, application forms, and information about the Reyes Foundation's Artist Grant Program. The stipend amount made her breath catch. It was more than she'd earned in the past 2 years combined. There was also Gabriel's business card with a handwritten note on the back. Your light speaks to others. Don't turn away from it. Mia moved to her easel and looked at the half-finished painting she'd been working on before Gabriel's visit. It was different from her usual style. Brighter, more open somehow. She'd started it the night after agreeing to donate to the auction, a scene of people gathering in a public square, faces turned towards something just beyond the frame of the canvas. She picked up her brush and began to work, adding definition to the gathered figures, heightening the sense of anticipation. As the afternoon light shifted across her studio, Mia lost herself in the painting, in the pure joy of creation without fear, without the constant worry about whether this piece would sell, whether it would pay the rent, whether it would validate her choice to be an artist. For these hours at least, the answer to all those questions was simply yes. The following days passed in a blur of activity. Mia completed the grant application, gathering images of her work, writing the required artist statement, filling out forms. Diana helped her proofread everything, offering encouragement and occasional editing. This is really happening, Diana said as they reviewed the final package. Are you ready? Mia considered the question. I'm terrified. she admitted. But yes, I think I'm ready. What she didn't tell Diana was that she'd received an email from Eleanor Whitman the day after Gabriel's visit, expressing interest in seeing more of her work, or that she'd spent hours crafting a careful response, sending links to her online portfolio and thanking Mrs. Whitman for her interest. Some opportunities felt too fragile to discuss, as if talking about them might cause them to disappear. A week after submitting her application, Mia's phone rang with an unknown number. Heart racing, she answered. Ms. Chen? This is James Peterson from the Eastside Children's Center, not the Reyes Foundation. Mia tried to hide her disappointment. Mr. Peterson, hello? What can I do for you? I was wondering if you might be interested in teaching an art class for our older children. Once a week for 8 weeks. He paused. It's a paid position, of course. Mia hadn't expected this. Teaching? I don't have much experience. Your passion and talent would be valuable to our kids, he said. Many of them have never had the opportunity to express themselves through art. You could make a real difference. The old Mia would have declined immediately, retreating to the safety of her solitary work. But something had shifted in her. Could I think about it? She asked instead. Of course. The program wouldn't start for a month. Take your time. After they hung up, Mia stood by her window, watching the city below. Teaching had never been part of her plan. She had always seen herself as a solitary creator, not someone who shared knowledge or guided others. Yet there was something appealing about the idea of helping children discover their own creativity. That evening, she found herself researching art education techniques, making notes about possible projects suitable for different age groups. By morning, she had decided to accept Mr. Peterson's offer. Teaching, she discovered, changed her in unexpected ways. The children at the center approached art with none of the self-consciousness or fear of judgment that plagued adult artists. They created boldly, joyfully, with total absorption. Watching them, Mia felt something loosen in her own approach to painting. Miss Mia, is this right? Asked Zoe, a serious 10-year-old with her hair in neat braids, holding up a watercolor wash that bled beautifully from purple to blue. There's no right in art, Mia said, crouching beside her. There's only what you want to express. What were you trying to show with these colors? The sky when it's almost night but not quite dark, Zoe said promptly. Mia smiled. Then you got it exactly right. As the weeks passed, Mia found herself looking forward to her teaching days, planning special projects, bringing in materials from her own supplies to supplement the center's limited resources. The children's enthusiasm fed something in her that had been starving, a sense of connection, of purpose beyond her own artistic journey. She was walking home from the center one bright afternoon, carrying a portfolio of student work she'd promised to mount for display, when she nearly collided with someone coming around a corner. I'm sorry, I wasn't, she began, then stopped. Gabriel Reyes smiled, seemingly unsurprised to see her. Mia, I was just on my way to the children's center. For the grant evaluation? She guessed. He nodded. Final site visit before we make our decision. His eyes went to the portfolio under her arm. Are you working with them now? Teaching, Mia said, feeling unexpectedly proud to say it. Once a week. The kids are amazing. I'd love to see what they're creating, Gabriel said. Would you mind showing me? They found a bench in a small park adjacent to the center, and Mia opened the portfolio, explaining each piece and the child who had created it. Gabriel listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about her teaching approach. You care about them, he observed when she finished. It shows in how you talk about their work. Mia nodded. They've taught me as much as I've taught them, maybe more. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind for weeks. Have you made decisions about the artist grants yet? Gabriel's expression grew more formal. The committee meets tomorrow for final selections. I should be able to notify all applicants by the end of the week. I see, Mia said, trying to hide her disappointment at the non-answer. Well, I should let you get to your meeting. As they stood to leave, Gabriel touched her arm lightly. Regardless of what happens with the grant, Mia, your work matters. Don't forget that. The words stayed with her as she continued home. Your work matters. Not your work is good, or your work has commercial potential, but your work matters. It was perhaps the validation she had been seeking all along. Friday arrived with no word from the Reyes Foundation. Mia checked her email obsessively, jumped every time her phone buzzed, and tried to distract herself by working on a new painting, a group portrait of her art students, their faces alight with concentration as they created. By evening, she had given up hope of hearing that day. She was washing her brushes, preparing to force herself to go out for dinner rather than stew in anxiety at home, when there was a knock at her door. Gabriel stood in the hallway, holding a thick envelope and looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I hope you don't mind my coming by unannounced. I wanted to deliver this in person." Mia's heart pounded as she invited him in. The envelope could contain either acceptance or rejection, and she wasn't sure which terrified her more. Gabriel handed her the envelope but didn't release it immediately. "Before you open this, I want you to know something." The decision was unanimous, but I recused myself from the voting. Mia frowned. "Why?" He met her eyes directly. "Because I didn't want there to be any question about the validity of the selection. Your work earned this on its own merit." He let go of the envelope and Mia took it, fingers trembling slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a formal letter on Reyes Foundation letterhead. "Dear Ms. Chen, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a recipient of the Reyes Foundation Artist Grant for the coming year." Mia looked up, eyes wide. "I got it?" Gabriel nodded, his face breaking into a smile. "You got it? Congratulations, Mia." She read further, taking in the details: the monthly stipend, the mentorship arrangement, the culminating exhibition in 18 months' time. It was everything she had hoped for, a chance to fully devote herself to her art without the constant pressure of financial survival. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't need to say anything," Gabriel replied. "Just keep painting." Mia set the letter carefully on her work table. "Would you like some tea? Or I might have a bottle of wine somewhere." "Tea would be nice," Gabriel said, following her to the small kitchenette. As Mia filled the kettle, a sudden thought occurred to her. "The timing of our meeting wasn't coincidence, was it? You were already looking at my work online before the auction." Gabriel leaned against the counter, looking slightly embarrassed. "I was researching local artists as part of our community outreach initiative. Your website caught my attention. The auction was a fortunate coincidence. I'd planned to contact you anyway." "So the bidding war was genuine," he assured her. "Eleanor Whitman and I have similar taste, it seems. Though I suspect she was bidding as much to thwart me as to acquire your painting." Mia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Art world politics. Something like that." They moved to sit by the window as they drank their tea, watching the city lights emerge as evening deepened. The conversation flowed easily between them, touching on art, teaching, their shared love of the city. "What will you do first?" Gabriel asked. "Now that you have the grant," Mia gazed out at the darkening sky. "Finish the painting of my students. And then," she smiled, "I've had an idea for a series about transformation, moments of change captured in ordinary settings, the second before everything shifts." "I'd like to see that," Gabriel said softly. Their eyes met, and Mia felt a different kind of possibility opening between them, not professional, but personal. For once, she didn't look away. "You will," she promised. A year later, Mia stood in the Reyes Foundation Gallery, surrounded by her work. 20 new paintings created during her grant year, arranged in the space under soft, perfect lighting. The exhibition, titled Thresholds, had opened to critical acclaim the previous evening, with collectors purchasing 11 pieces on opening night alone. She moved slowly through the gallery during the quiet morning hours before it opened to the public. Each painting represented a stage in her transformation, from the early, more hesitant pieces to the bold, confident works that dominated the second room. The centerpiece was a large canvas showing children in an art class, their faces illuminated with discovery, the teacher's back to the viewer, but her posture suggesting both guidance and freedom. "It's everything I hoped it would be," said a voice behind her. Mia turned to find Gabriel watching her with undisguised pride. Their relationship had evolved gradually over the past year, moving from mentor and grantee to friends, and finally to something deeper, more personal. They had been careful to maintain professional boundaries until the grant period officially ended, but now, with the exhibition opened, those constraints were lifting. "Because of you," Mia said, moving toward him. Gabriel shook his head. "I only opened a door. You walked through it and created all of this." He gestured to the surrounding artwork. "You transformed your life through your own talent and courage." Mia thought about the painting that had started it all. Walking away from yesterday, which now hung in Gabriel's home. The solitary figure moving through rain-slick streets, followed by that persistent golden light. "Not alone," she said softly. "I had help along the way. You, the children at the center, even Eleanor Whitman." She smiled at that last one. "The formidable Mrs. Whitman had become an unexpected ally, introducing Mia to gallery owners and collectors throughout the grant year. Speaking of which, Gabriel said, checking his watch, the center children will be here in an hour for their private tour. Are you ready? Mia nodded, thinking of Zoe and the others who had been part of her journey, whose own artworks now filled a special section of the exhibition. More than ready. As they walked together toward the gallery entrance to prepare for the day's visitors, Mia paused by a window overlooking the city. The morning light streamed in, creating patterns on the polished floor that mimicked the play of light in her paintings. "What are you thinking?" Gabriel asked, standing close beside her. Mia turned to him, taking in the face that had become so dear to her. "I'm thinking about bidding wars," she said with a smile, "and how sometimes losing what you think you want leads to finding what you actually need." He laughed softly, understanding the reference to their first meeting. "And what do you need now, Mia-chen? Now that you've arrived at this threshold?" She linked her fingers with his, looking back at her paintings, each one a piece of herself given form and color, each one a step on the path that had led her here. "To keep walking forward," she said simply, "into tomorrow."